Welcome to the lecture series on machine learning laboratory. Today we are studying the second experiment of the machine learning lab. The title of the experiment is for a given set of training data examples which are stored in a .csv file, implement and demonstrate the candidate elimination algorithm to output a description of the set of all hypotheses which are consistent with the training examples. Let us study the candidate elimination algorithm. Before studying the candidate elimination algorithm, first we will see what are the different problems that are being faced with the find S algorithm. So find S algorithm will find a hypothesis that is consistent with the training data, and it has no way to determine whether it has found the only hypothesis in H that is consistent with the data or whether there are many other consistent hypotheses. Then the one more disadvantage with the find S algorithm is that when multiple hypotheses are consistent with the training example, find S will find only the most specific. So it is not clear whether we should prefer this hypothesis over say the most general or some other hypothesis of intermediate generality. So to overcome some of these disadvantages of find S algorithm, the candidate elimination algorithm is being proposed. The candidate elimination algorithm works on the concept of version spaces. Candidate elimination algorithm is applied to problems such as learning regularities in chemical mass spectroscopy and learning control rules for heuristic search. The practical applications of the candidate elimination algorithm are limited by the fact that they perform poorly when given noisy training data. The candidate elimination algorithm, so in studying this, so we use the concept of the version space. Version space is nothing but it is a hypothesis space which consists of hypothesis and training example, and it is a subset of the hypothesis from the hypothesis space which are consistent with the training examples in D. In studying the candidate elimination algorithm, we also use general boundary and the specific boundary. And let us study what are the different steps in the candidate elimination algorithm. Candidate elimination algorithm computes the version space containing all hypotheses from H that are consistent with an observed sequence of training examples. So let us look at what are the different steps in the candidate elimination algorithm. First, initialize the general boundary G to the set of maximally general hypotheses in H and initialize S to the set of maximally specific hypotheses in H. Then for each training example, do the following. If D is a positive example, that is, if D is a is either yes, true or 1, that is a positive example, then perform the below set of operations. If D is a negative example, then there are other set of operations. Let us see, when we encounter a positive example, what are the steps to be followed. The first thing is remove from the general boundary any hypotheses that are inconsistent with D. Then second step is for each hypothesis yes in specific boundary that is not consistent with D, then remove it from yes and add to S all minimal generalizations H of S such that H is consistent with D and the sum members of G is more general than H. Then after adding all this, remove from S any hypothesis that is more general than another hypothesis in specific boundary. Now if D is a negative example, in such case we do exactly reverse operation as that of the positive operation. as of that of the positive example. Now in the positive example, we removed from G any hypothesis that is inconsistent with D, and in negative example we do exactly opposite. We remove from S any hypothesis that is inconsistent with D. Then for each hypothesis G in general boundary that is not consistent with D, then remove that from the general boundary and add to G all minimal specializations such that H of G such that H is consistent with D and some members of S are more specific than H. Then after adding, remove from G any hypothesis that is less general than another hypothesis in G. So this is the candidate elimination algorithm. Now the thing that is being observed here is what we were doing in the find S algorithm is that if we encounter a negative example in the find S algorithm, we are straightly ignoring it. But in case of candidate elimination algorithm, we update some of the hypotheses when we encounter the negative example. One important thing to be remembered in candidate elimination algorithm is when we encounter a positive example, we have to update the G, we have to update the S, and we have to refine the G. When we encounter the negative example, we have to update the G and refine the S. That is the main important thing to be remembered. Here an example with the Enjoy Sport dataset. We know this dataset already: sky, air temperature, humidity, wind, water, forecast. So these are the 6 attributes on which we applied the find S algorithm, and Enjoy Sport was the target concept. So let us apply the candidate elimination algorithm on this same data set. The first step is to initialize G boundary and S boundary. Since we are considering the 6 attributes, so we will be having 6 placeholders in G and S hypothesis. Let us start with the G. So G is the general hypothesis which indicates any value is acceptable. So hence G0 contains 6 question marks indicating that any 6 attributes, any value for the 6 attributes is acceptable. Then the S contains 6 placeholders which contain 5 values, which indicates that all the attribute values are being more specific. None of them are being satisfied. So hence when we start the first example, so the candidate elimination algorithm checks the S boundary and finds it is overly specific and fails to cover the positive example. Now when we encounter the first training example, we will first check whether it is a positive training example or a negative training example. If it is a positive training example, we have to update the S and refine the G. If it is a negative training example, we have to update the G and refine the S. So since we encountered the first training example as positive example, we have to update S and refine the G. So in order to update the S, our S was just the most specific, which cannot satisfy any of the values. Hence the first data instance will be the new updated S. So hence the boundary is therefore revised by moving it to the least more general hypothesis that covers the new example. Then since there is no any refinement needed for G, so we keep G0 as it is. So after the end of the first training example, so we have S0, that is S1 as the first data instance, and G0 and G1 as the question marks, that is general value. Now coming to the second training example. If we look at the second training example, we know that it is a positive training example again. So when we encounter the positive training example, we have to update the value of S. Now when updating the value of S, we do same thing as we did in the find S algorithm. First we will say our hypothesis is S1, that is sunny, warm, normal, strong, warm and same, and our training example, that is second training example, is D. Now compare each attribute value. Whenever there is any difference, so in that place we will just put the question mark. So sunny first is same, warm second is same, third is normal in S1 and high in data training example, so hence we put the question mark in the S2, and then remaining all attributes are same. So hence my S2 is sunny, warm, strong, warm and same. So what is my G2? So since there is no any refinement can be made for the G2, so it is same as that of the G0 and G1, that is all question marks. Now moving on to the third training example. Now when we look into the third training example, it is a negative training example. So hence in this case we have to update the G and refine the S. Now how to update the G? So we will first look at what are the different values that are present for the third training example. The third training example has rainy, cold, high, strong, warm and change. So let us see how to update the value of G. So training example, it is a negative training example, and which means that the G boundary is overly general and hence G incorrectly predicts this new example as a positive example, because our G1, G0, G1 and G2 is telling that if any value is there then it is a positive example. But if I look into the third training example, we cannot say all values will be a positive example. So hence I need to update the value of G. Now if we look at the third training example and the S2, so what we can say is when the value is sunny, then we can say that it will be a positive example. So hence my G3, the first hypothesis will contain sunny followed by the all question marks. Then the second attribute in training example is D. So because of cold, it is a negative example, but if it is a warm, then it might be a positive example. So hence the second attribute must be a warm. So hence I write the second hypothesis in G3 as the warm attribute, as warm. Then the remaining attributes are all same. So the third attribute is high in training example, but third attribute is not making any impact whether it is a positive or negative example. Now fourth and fifth attribute are both are same in a negative example as well as in hypothesis, so hence it is not needed to update in G. And if you look at the last attribute, it is change in D, whereas it is same in the S2. So hence if I want to make that as a positive example, then I have to update it as a same. So hence the G must contain last attribute as the same. So initially my G2 was all question marks. Now my G3 is updated with the sunny, warm and same hypothesis. Question that might arise here is, now since there are 6 attributes specified in G2, why there are only 3 new hypotheses are proposed in G3? For example, I can also say that H equal to question mark normal with all question mark. Why I can't say a third attribute should be normal in order to be a positive training example? If we look at the specific hypothesis in this case, so it is telling that if any value is there for the third attribute, then it will be a positive example. So if I make normal as a condition for the positive example, then it is inconsistent with the previous positive hypothesis. So hence we will not consider such type of hypothesis. Let's move on to the last attribute, last training example. training example is again the positive example, and here we need to update the value of yes and we need to refine the value of g. So our S3 was sunny, warm, question mark, strong, warm and same. So let us compare S3 with the training example D. So first attribute is sunny, second attribute is warm, third attribute anything, fourth attribute is strong, fifth and sixth attributes are different. So fifth attribute is warm in S3 and it is cool in D. Similarly, sixth attribute in S3 is same and in D it is change. So these two attributes are to be made more general by putting the question marks. Now when I update the S4, I have to consider the G3 also at the same time. Now what is my G3? So G3 contains sunny, warm and same as the attribute. If we look at S4 and G3, so what S4 tells is the last attributes can be anything, but the G3 says that last attributes must be same. So that is a bit inconsistent with the example. So hence in refining the value of G3, we just eliminate the last hypothesis and we keep only the sunny and warm attributes in the G4. So that is how we can refine the value of G3 to G4 in the when we encounter the positive training example. So that's how the candidate elimination algorithm works. So after processing the 4 examples, the boundary sets S4 and G4 delimit the version space of all hypotheses that are consistent with the set of incrementally observed training examples. So this is the version space where G and S are the boundaries within which any hypothesis can be stated and that form the version space, and it is consistent with the training example. Let us see the Python implementation of the candidate elimination algorithm. We are executing the experiment in the Jupyter notebook. So the first thing is we need to import the modules that are needed for the executing the code, for executing the program. The first is the NumPy module, that is numerical Python, which is required for the mathematical operations, and another module that we are using here is the pandas, which is the panel data structure, which is used for importing the data from the CSV file. So first we execute these two statements, and after that we will import the data from the CSV file, that is 1 finds.1 space finds.csv file. So how we import the data is we use the read CSV file, and the CSV file the read CSV function is present in the pandas library. So hence we use pd.readcsv, and this imports the content of the content of the CSV file into the data variable, and then we convert that into the data frame. Even if we directly use, then also we will get the same result. So instead of making it as a data frame, we can directly import this with the data equal to pd.readcsv 1 finds.csv. Then next is we separate the 6 attributes and the target concept using the ilog function of the pandas. So it is all the ilog function is always used with there is index location, that is always used with data frame data frame types. So I will consider the first I will just print the data. What is the data value? So the 6 attributes, the sky, air temperature, humidity, wind, water forecast and water sport. So these 7 attributes are being arriving at a once, but I want them to be separate. The 6 attributes are to be separated as a concept, and the last attribute is to be separated as a target. So hence we separate concept and target using the ILO function of the data frames, and we store the resulting attributes in the array. So array is present in the a numerical Python module, so hence we use np.array function. So after executing this first concept, so we will just print what is the content of the concept. So concept contains the first 6 attributes of the data object, and then target contains the last attribute of the data example. So if we look at this value, so the concept contains this array, the concept array has these values, and the target contains yes, yes, no, yes. Then next is we will slice the data frame into the target and the concept. Now we write the function learn. So the learn function is nothing but the candidate elimination algorithm, so where we are performing the actual candidate elimination algorithm. Here first the function name is learn. In Python the functions are defined with the keyword def, and it takes 2 arguments, one is concept and another one is the target. We already know what is the concept and target. These are 2 arrays that are being passed to the learn function. Now the first point in the learn function is specific underscore h, which specifies the specific hypothesis, and by default the first training example is positive in our case, so hence we directly copy the first example itself into the specific hypothesis. Then next, in general hypothesis I need to put the question marks, so that is it should be a general hypothesis. So how many hypotheses I need to put is, so how many specific hypothesis attributes are there, so those many question marks are to be put in the general hypothesis. Then after initializing the general hypothesis, the next step is to check each and every training example whether it is positive training example or the negative training example. Now how we check whether it is a positive or negative training example? So it is depending on the target concept. So if it is a yes, then we take it as a positive training example. If it is a no, we will consider the negative training example. When we encounter the positive training example, we update the value of yes and we refine the value of g. So when we encounter the positive training example, if target of I equal to yes, then for the entire length of the specific hypothesis, so we update yes and g is updated, g is just refined. So that is how we consider the h of x is not equal to specific h of x. So if it is true, means if the training example is the attributes in the training example are same with the specific hypothesis, then we just move on with the next attribute. If they are not same, then in that case we are putting specific underscore h of x equal to question mark, and for those many attributes we are putting question mark in the general hypothesis. Now if we encounter the negative training example, then in such case we update the value of general hypothesis and we refine the value of specific hypothesis. So hence when we update the when we encounter the negative training example, so we compare it with the we just check whether the hypothesis is in specific in order to maintain the consistency. So if it is present, then we initialize that to the general hypothesis, that is general hx of hxx equal to specific of X, which indicates that if the specific hypothesis and training example are not similar, then in that case you have to put whatever there in the specific hypothesis to the general hypothesis. Otherwise, if there is a mismatch, then put the question mark. If there is a match, then put the question mark. Now, after performing this positive and negative training example, then the last step in the implementation is to remove all the hypotheses which are having all the question marks. If we execute this value, for example, if we look at the general hypothesis, what is the output it contains is, it contains a lot of question marks. For let us see what is this containing. Output of the general and the specific hypothesis. If we look at the most of the hypothesis, general hypothesis, there are a lot of question marks are being present in the output. So hence what we do is we will just remove all these question marks, so that we will left out with only hypotheses which are having the values for the attributes. That in order to do that, we will write the we will use the remove function. First we will find the indices for which the values are all question marks. So how I can get all the hypotheses which are having the question marks is, so I will just enumerate over the general hypothesis, and I will find out the value of the index and the location. So this is a list concatenation where I can just check the value and initialize it with the index variable. So once I get the indices, then we iterate over these indices and we use the remove function and to remove all the question marks of the hypothesis. Then at the last we return specific hypothesis and general hypothesis. Now once we remove all these hypotheses, the one which are having the most specific and most general are being given as the final output. Now this is the content, or this is the code that is present within the function called learn, where the candidate elimination algorithm is implemented. Then after that we need to call the function. The function call is being made in this cell. So first we will execute this function, then after that we will come to this cell. So since the learn function returns two hypotheses, we save it in the two variables, s underscore final and g underscore final, and we call the function learn with concepts and targets, which we already defined in this place, which we already know what is concept and what is target. Let us execute the function call. So at the end of the function call, we will get the result final s and final g as sunny, warm, question mark, strong, question mark, and then final g as sunny and warm. So this is the final s and final g of the candidate elimination algorithm. So any hypothesis representation within this is a valid version space. That is for the second experiment of the machine learning lab, candidate elimination algorithm implementation. So thank you.